Game on, everybody, and welcome to another video. So many people have actually been requesting my Solfachord deck profile, so I'm here to share that with you today. Let's go ahead and get started. First up, we have 3 DoSolfachord Cutia. The best way to describe this card is basically it's the Stratos of the deck, giving you the ability to add any one Solfachord Pendulum monster from your deck to your hand. This is also the highest scale in the deck. You need to play 3 of these. Next, we play 2 ReSolfachord Dreamia. She's great to be utilized as an extender for the deck, and also has a scale 7. I contemplated playing 3 of her, but 2 is honestly enough for the deck. After all, this whole deck is searchable. We also play 1 MiSolfachord Eliteia. One of the strongest counters to Pendulum decks is Anti-Spell Fragrance. Eliteia is a great way to remove a card, however there are better options which I'll show in the future. You need to play at least 1 copy of every Solfachord card in the deck. Up next, we play 2 FaSolfachord Fancia. I really contemplated playing 3 of these, but if you're really good at managing your resources, you should be able to get the remaining names from your deck to your extra deck. She has kind of an awkward pendulum scale, so that's why I really kind of cut her down from 3 to 2, because once you get all the names from the deck to the extra deck, you can really go off. We also play 3 SolSolfachord Gracia. When she's normal or special summon, you can add any Solfachord spell or trap from your deck to your hand. You have to play 3 of these. I know I just mentioned that FaSolfachord has a weird scale number. Gracia is the opposite of Fancia, her pendulum scale and level being the opposite of her, but she searches every spell and trap in your deck, which is actually extremely valuable and can be done every time she's normal summoned or special summoned, and you'll be pendulum summoning a lot in this deck. We also play 1 LaSolfachord Angelia. During your main phase, you contribute 1 Solfachord pendulum monster, and if you do, you can special summon 1 Solfachord pendulum monster from your deck whose pendulum scale is 2 higher or 2 lower than the monster, except for this card. So essentially, a lot of people compare this card to Lone Fire Blossom. Angelia herself can also special summon the boss monster of this deck, and she can get you fancy just off this 1 card as well. She really helps you kind of get all the other monsters from your deck onto the field. Super awesome, but just a one-off. We also play 1 TiSolfachord Beautia. What she essentially does is that she has the ability to basically remove problematic monsters. She's also useful as a scale 2, however, she's mostly a brick. Most of the time you want to scale your Cutia over the Beautia. You kind of just have to play 1. I've seen people play 2, but that's mostly just to set into the scale, but I think 1 is just enough. And lastly, we play 2 DoSolfachord Coolia. I've seen people argue to play 1. I really think it's great to have 2, just so then that way if you draw it, you can just set it to scale. You'll essentially want 1 in scale and 1 on the field at all times. And most people compare this card to Trident, which actually is banned at the current time of this video. It has the ability to basically negate 2 monsters on the field, and based on your pendulum skills can even destroy those monsters. Next up, we play 3 copies of Diviner of the Herald. So a lot of people see this card and they immediately go, oh, this is a Drytron card. They might even say it's a Herald card, which is true, but what this card actually is a fairy support card, and it's so good for the deck. Every Solfachord card is a fairy, and there's even an awesome combo that essentially searches the Cutia from your deck, special summon it to the field, and you get the whole engine going. To support the Diviner combo, we play 1 Trias. This is the target you send from the deck to the graveyard. Otherwise, if this is in your hand, you can send a different fairy monster, which we'll get into, and you contribute up to a specific amount of fairy monsters, 1 being enough to do the whole combo. And if you end up tributing 2 or 3, you end up getting these other effects of destroying 1 card your opponent controls or drawing 2 cards. Other cards we play is 1 Eva. This is one of our alternative targets to dump to the graveyard. Then you can banish this and another light monster to essentially search your other cards, such as Diviner and Herald of the Orange Light. So we play 1 Herald of the Orange Light. It's essentially just a searchable hand trap for the deck. And then for our other hand traps of choice, we play 3 Ash Blossoms and 3 Effect Failures. So the reason why we play this Effect Veiler is actually it's really good for the format right now. It goes into our access code combo, and it has a lot of other synergies that we'll get into later. Onto the spells, we play 2 Solfachord Harmonia. I used to play 3 in the deck, but you kind of don't really want to do that. 2 is enough. It has the scale manipulation, allows you to add 1 Solfachord pendulum monster from your extra deck to your hand, and it even has the ability to destroy your opponent's cards. We also play 3 Solfachord Elegance. You need to play 3 of these. This card basically turns into any Solfachord card that gets set straight to the scale. If you have a Solfachord card in your hand, you can actually send it to your extra deck and then set 2 scales. And it even gives you the ability, which I don't really necessarily feel like comes up too often, but you can add 2 cards, 1 odd and 1 even pendulum scale from your pendulum zone to the extra deck and then draw 2 cards. You'll mostly just be doing this to set up your scales. So I always personally like to play some back row removal in my main deck, so we're playing 2 Cosmic Cyclones. Striker's back in the format. It's really great just to kind of just throw that in there, and it's also an out to Mystic Mine. We then play 1 Called by the Grave. Right now, this format is very hand trap heavy. We kind of have some combos, but I like to play my decks more of a control variation. It's just a good card to play. Because we rely so much on searching, we just need it. We also play one Solfachord Formal. It's essentially a searchable interruption. We then also main deck 2 Solemn Judgments and 2 Solemn Strikes. Both these cards are really easy to side out depending if you know if you're going first or second. But I always like to build my decks as like you never know if you're going first or second, so you kind of build a hybrid for the first game. So this deck profile is post Dawn of Majesty. So we're going to go ahead and include 2 GrandSolfachord Musecia. This card is awesome for the deck. You can add 1 pendulum monster from your hand to that extra deck face up, and if you do, you can add 1 face up pendulum monster from your extra deck to your hand. If you send an odd, you get an even, and if you send an even, you get an odd. It also has the bonus effect of when you pendulum summon a Solfachord monster, you can target one of them and then add 1 Solfachord monster with a level equal to the targeted monster's pendulum scale from your deck to your hand. So if you pen summon a high level monster, you get a high scale, and vice versa. If you happen to be playing this deck pre Dawn of Majesty, you can easily just supplement this card for any link too. So not too many people have mentioned this tech, but it's too good to pass up. Essentially what happens is one of the most difficult cards for Pendulum to play around is Anti-Spell Fragrance or even Imperial Order. You know, cards like that basically prevent you from playing the game. So we actually play 1 Alter Entity in TiS. So the line of thinking is basically you summon Diviner, you send in TiS, and then you get to destroy the card on the field. Super clutch. We play 1 Link Karibo. So you can make this from your Cutia. If you're ever in a pinch, you can go ahead and normal summon Eva, make the Link Karibo, force it into the graveyard, then search your 2 cards. We also play 1 Nightmare Phoenix. It's basically another way to essentially get rid of back row. We also play 1 Line of the Light Charmer. So this requires 2 monsters, including a light monster. This is part of the Diviner package, and that is also really great against Drytron. This can help us link climb and then eventually just pendulum summon with all of our full extra deck, and then go into some really big plays. Also, if this link summon card is destroyed by battle or destroyed by opponent's card effect, you can actually add 1 light monster with 1500 less defense from your deck to your hand. I don't know, seems kind of nice to me. It also works for this and this. We're gonna be jumping around the link levels right now. We also do play the access code combo. So we have Christian Halki Fibrak, Celine, and 1 access code talker. So if you don't know this combo, essentially any 2 monsters kind of gets you there. You can basically wipe the whole board and can be really problematic for your opponent. All right, so back to the link 2s, we have 2 IP Mascarenas. There's a reason why we play 2. Arrows are great. As a worst case scenario too, you can do technically an IP Mascarena pass board. Not super ideal, but this will make sense in the later of the deck profile. So one of the best cards to play with IP Mascarena is Nightmare Unicorn. Essentially summon this on your opponent's turn and then you get to spin a card back. Super disruptive. And another great card to link climb from IP Mascarena is Mech Knight Crusadia Avermax. So this card is a link 4 and it requires 2+ special summon monsters from the extra deck. But monsters that are pendulum summoned from the extra deck come from the extra deck. So it's a lot easier to actually make this. If you can manage to make an IP Mascarena, then pendulum summon, you can go straight into this card. Really hard for opponents to get around, most of the time. We also play 1 Apollousa, Bow the Goddess. It's a fairy type. It's also just really good. And the last card in our extra deck is Underworld Goddess of the Closed World. During your opponent's turn, if you have IP on the board, you can go into this card. This card is super disruptive. Onto the side deck, we play our 3rd Solemn Judgment and our 3rd Solemn Strike. We also play 1 Harpy's Feather Duster. We play 3 Ghost Spell and Haunted Mansion. Trust me, you're gonna wanna play this card for this format. This card shuts down Tri-Brigade, shuts down Invoked, Adagnisters, what else is there? Drytron, and Sky Striker. The only reason why I play this card in the side is that I always kind of like try to prepare myself for a rogue case scenario. We also play 3 Drollin Lockbirds. I think Drytron is probably one of the best decks this format, so I'm kind of just siding against it. Triple DD Crow. A lot of people are probably going to play Salamangreats and Sky Striker, so being able to banish their one-offs at a moment's notice is extremely disruptive. And one of the best things about Pendulum monsters is that we don't necessarily always require our normal summon, so we can really capitalize on that and play 3 Winged Dragon of Ra Spear mode. This is extremely good, especially when we know when we're going second. So there you guys have it, my Solfachord deck profile. I hope you guys enjoyed, and if you guys are interested in picking up any of these cards that I've mentioned here in this video, please feel free to use my TCG player affiliate link in the description box below. Don't forget to leave a like and comment on the video on what you think about this deck profile. I usually always respond to all my comments, and if you guys can think of any other way for me to improve this deck, please feel free to let me know in the comments below. One of my favorite things about Yu-Gi-Oh! Is always coming up with different ways to play decks, theorizing on how to make the deck as best as possible. The deck may not be meta, it has so much potential, and I'm always interested in optimizing my deck to be the best it can be. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. I'm out of here.